So, I've been playing a really degenerate amount of World of Warcraft. And that's led me to think about how everyone's experience in the game is just kind of fundamentally different. Whether you choose to craft, or raid, or do Mythic Plus, or just kind of engage with the collectathon of older content, you're going to inherently just be playing the game differently. And so much of that comes from your community, but the other big part of it is what class you play. So that begs the question, which caster is the most fun in World of Warcraft? I think it kind of goes without saying that the most fun class or the best class is the one that you want to play. And if what defines being the best is what does the most damage, Warcraft logs exist, but that doesn't really go into the individual playstyles of every class. So I've spent the last way too long leveling all the different casters, getting them somewhat geared, and trying to run different content with them. As a little bit of background, I'm a Black Mage player. I come from Final Fantasy XIV. And while I did play WoW first, and I played it for a long time when I was a teenager, I was a Death Knight player, and since switching to Final Fantasy XIV, I've become very caster build. So coming back to the game, everything kind of felt foreign. I wasn't enjoying Death Knight the way I used to, and I wanted to play a caster, but I really didn't know which caster to play. I did some research online, and I found some people talking about what class they should play if they enjoyed Black Mage in Final Fantasy XIV. And the answers varied quite a bit. Some people were comparing it to Warlock or Shadow Priest, but it seemed to be mostly an aesthetic thing. People really like the dark edginess of it and being like, oh, Black Mages wear black, Shadow Priests are void. And that didn't seem quite right to me. And eventually I came across this thread where someone said, I play Arcane Mage, I used to play Black Mage, I like it. So I went in, I unlocked Nightborn so I could have glowy blue digits, and I was off to the races. I really enjoy the different mechanics within Arcane Mage. I think the volleyball build is fun. It seems to have been derived from a version of Arcane Mage that was for PvP and is now really good in PvE instances. I like that you have to aim where your arcane orbs go. They don't just kind of hit whatever you're generally looking at, and I feel that that really adds another dimension to the game. As a Black Mage player, I really like these little things you can do to optimize your playstyle or challenges that the game introduces that make it a little bit more engaging. Whether that's you can't move and you have to use your ley lines, or having to aim in this case. So with that being said, I really have a strong fondness for Arcane Mage. I don't main it anymore, but I still think it's an S tier caster. After raiding with my Arcane Mage for a while, I started to wonder about the other casters in the game. I had seen that Warlock was in a really good spot, especially Demonology, and it made me want to try it. So I logged into my old Warlock that I had made when I was 16 during Wrath of the Lich King, and I started playing it. With the leveling progression now, I got up to max level in a couple of days, and it was really fun. I found that the new Demonology flow just kind of made sense. It felt less like the spec you play to level, and more like a spec you can play to raid and do Mythic Plus in. The way that you summon just so many little guys is super addicting and super fun. I found myself constantly being like, oh my god, look at all my little guys on my screen to my friends, and that always seemed to garner a laugh or two. It was really, really satisfying. It has this chunky, stompy feel to it as you summon more demons and do your imp explosions and all these other things, so I really enjoy it. The only thing I don't enjoy is it kind of feels like it has a lack of control to it. When you switch targets, your demons don't immediately switch and start doing damage to them. At least it doesn't seem like they do. And a lot of the time when you need to stop damaging for whatever reason, because Veilgore and Ezrak need to be within 15% of each other's health, sometimes they'll keep attacking. Or during other phases of fights, you'll see that the Demonology Warlock continues to do damage when they don't need to be. I find that lack of control a little frustrating. So for the sake of my list, I'm going to put Demonology Warlock in A tier, but it's pretty close to S, if I'm being honest. Somewhere around the same time as I was leveling my Warlock, I had started leveling my Elemental Shaman. I started them during Legion, and kind of dropped the class because it wasn't as engaging as I wanted it to be, and back then I was a certified Death Knight addict, and I can kind of see why. Shamans are great to have in a raid. They have a lot of utility, they can be fun, but as a caster, they're really basic. You kind of just press your buttons that make you do more damage, and you press your damage buttons and you rinse and repeat. The nuancing skill expression of the class is maybe not enough for me. I find that it's a little bit too forgiving, and maybe that's just because there's something wrong with me. In my opinion, I don't think that Elemental Shaman is a caster for me, but I can certainly see it as a caster for someone, especially if you don't like having too many nuances within your rotation and you just want to press the same buttons over and over again. I think that Elemental Shaman is a good place to start. I'd say that they're probably B tier. You might be thinking, with the release of Midnight, Dakota, did you make a Herendar? Herenir? And you bet your ass I did. I made a Herenir Druid. And you know what? They're pretty cool. I love the way the Herenir look. I love the aesthetic of Druid. But Druid is by far the most disappointing caster in the game. Going Boomkin feels like a joke. You have 2 buttons. At least that's how it feels. I know that you literally don't have 2 buttons, but you basically have 2 buttons, and you just kind of bounce between them, and you do damage, and it's fine. And I guess if you like that, that's fine. But Jesus Christ, it's so boring. It's so genuinely boring. If you want to play a caster, and you want to play a caster that feels like it fucking matters, play anything else. I promise you won't have a bad time. Druid, bear form, great. Druid, feral form, great. Druid, what's the other one? Healing form? There's healing in this game? Great. Boomkin, bad. Boomkin is very bad and very boring. And because it commits the cardinal sin of being boring, it is F tier. Now, coming off the coattails of playing Arcane Mage, I found myself wanting to try the other mage specs. I knew that Fire Mage probably wasn't going to be my speed because everybody says it's just Frost Mage, but worse. So I kind of just dunked myself right into Frost Mage. It's fine. I think that it suffers from a very similar problem to Elemental Shaman, where it's a very basic rotation. You kind of just go up and down your keyboard to get things going, and you do a lot of sustain damage. It has a little bit more nuance and skill expression than Elemental Shaman, which I like, but it feels like the damage I'm doing more correlates to my gear score than the actual way I'm playing, if that makes sense. As I'll talk about later in this video, Destruction Warlock requires you to really think about where you place things and how you move around the arena. Frost Mage is super mobile. You just kind of keep going, and you just kind of keep doing damage output. For that reason, I think it's probably B tier. If you want to account for damage, it's A tier, but I think it's probably B tier. And like I said before, Fire Mage, people were right, is just a worse version of Frost Mage, and it's just about clicking the glowing buttons, which sucks. So I'm going to give it C tier, because at least it's kind of satisfying to play. This is about the point where I hit burnout, and why this video has taken me so long to make, because I did start it around the beginning of when Midnight came out. I started playing Shadow Priest. Shadow Priest is very cool. I love the aesthetic of Shadow Priest. I made an Alliance character. I played through the Alliance side of BFA, which I had never seen before, so that was pretty cool and pretty fun. But I think that dot classes aren't for me. There's something about the way it's like slippery and glidey that isn't as satisfying for me to play, and I found myself not engaging with it as heavily. It's definitely a fun class, and I have a couple people in my guild who like to play Shadow Priest and Affliction Lock, and they really love them. I am not one of them, and that's okay. I don't have to be. With that being said, the Halo play and the Void Ball play of Shadow Priest, very different, which is very cool. I love how there is those different forms of skill expression. I love how you can play the class differently. It's cool to manage your dots, and like it's a very different way of playing than I'm used to, because I'm used to having like one dot that you have to like listen for the cooldown to pop off, and then you press the dot button again. But Shadow Priest has so many different things going on that you have to keep track of so many different debuffs. It is very cool. It is not for me, but it is very cool. I'm going to give Shadow Priest A tier, and while I'm talking about dot classes, I'm going to talk about Affliction Lock, which is largely the same opinion. You just kind of have to add this layer of resource management onto it that Shadow Priest doesn't really have. I like it, but it doesn't feel intrusive. The resource management is not difficult enough for me to say that it is marginally different. You just kind of have to keep track of slightly different things to keep your dots going. For that reason, I'm also going to give it A tier. I will take applications to make the dot classes S tier, but this is my list and not yours, so we're moving on. After getting Shadow Priest to max level, I found myself getting a bit of a second win, and I was able to blast through Devourer with no problem. I used Time Walking, which I recommend for leveling if it's available, but at the same time, I started raiding with Destruction Warlock. And Destruction Warlock had a different feel to it. It was so much more cemented. Everything you do felt like it mattered. Playing Black Mage, I'm used to having pretty heavy lead feet, and Destruction Warlock really played into that. I really had to pay attention to where I started fights, where I was ending fights, and where I was placing my portals and my demonic circle. Putting in these optimizations made me do so much more damage. Putting in the time and effort to understand how I can mutate my rotation to fit different scenarios feels so good. In fact, I started playing around with the talent builds, which is something I hadn't really messed around with up to this point. I was kind of just going on Warcraft logs, looking up specific fights and finding which version of the talent structure is best for me. But going into Destruction Warlock, I started actually reading the talents and understanding what they do. I found myself pulling these logs from Warcraft logs and modifying them a little bit to fit my playstyle better, taking different versions of curses and abilities that I felt would lend themselves better to the fight. Though I understand that some of these people are doing like oodles and caboodles of damage, to me, I would rather have the class feel how I want it to feel. And by modifying these top damage dealers builds, I was doing that, and I was doing so much damage. Understanding Havoc really changed the way I play. Like I'm going into Velgor and Ezrak now and topping meters as a Destruction Warlock, something that's not necessarily even meta, and a lot of groups are denying I even join when I play Destruction Warlock. So I join as Demonology and switch, and then still do really well. And then I started obsessing over like the different forms of these talent builds and obsessing over how I can optimize further. And I started falling into this rabbit hole, and I started realizing I think I'm a Warlock player now. So for that, Destruction Warlock gets S tier. Now, with Devourer being the newest caster, I really didn't know what to expect. I thought it was interesting that they wore leather. I thought it was interesting that they had such a small rotation. And I thought it was interesting the way that they fit into the lore of the game. So going into it, I kind of had an open mind, and I'm glad I did. Devourer plays like a fly with a machine gun. It's crazy how much damage you do and how much you move around. I didn't really know what to expect, and I wasn't let down. I will say that the one thing about it is that while you're leveling, you have no health. For some reason, I thought that leather being heavier than cloth would mean that I would be dying less, and that's not the case. I die so much as Devourer. It's obscene. I did the Night Elf Heritage Armor quest, and I went into those caverns. You might know the ones, if you've done it, and you have to go in there and fight like hordes and hordes and hordes of demons, and it's like this whole thing. It's pretty cool, except I kept wiping like over and over and over and over and over again. I had to repair my gear twice going down there because I didn't have enough constitution to deal with it. I didn't have enough health. It was such a bad time. I eventually did it, but it's like, oh my God, what's happening? So like when you go into these fights in Mythic Plus and raids, you just get stomped. Like you have to do the mechanics. There's no, I'll just pop a defensive and stand here, Lamau, like I can do with like every other caster in the game. You have to do them. You have to run around. You have to do your mechanics. You have to collect your orbs so you can stay in your Metamorphosis form and do a good Gorillion damage. But if anything looks at you funny, you're dead. And I don't think that's a bad thing, actually. I think it's actually really cool because it makes their agility make sense. It makes their movement make sense. It feels like they've justified them having glide, which I really like. With that being said, they also have the smallest pool of buttons, which is a good thing and a bad thing. I think it's really good because it means that there's a viable caster for controller players. And I know World of Warcraft doesn't have native controller support right now, but there are add-ons, and I know a couple people who use said add-ons. So having something with a limited scope of buttons that you can use on like the face of a controller is really nice. I think that for that reason, it's my number one pick if you're a controller player. And overall, I think I'm going to put it in A tier. I think it's S tier if you're a controller player, but I'm not, so I'm going to put it in A tier. I just find that the speed of it being the challenge is not necessarily my thing. I don't always want to be like slamming my face into my keyboard all the time. I think that there are people who will like that, but that's a playstyle is not for me. So going from the APM nightmare that is Devourer into Devastation Evoker was a bit of whiplash. if you don't know, Devastation Evoker is the direct damage output version of Evoker. And it's really cool. You have a lot of abilities that are very, very dragon-like, which is very fun. You have a lot of abilities that are utility-based, and it feels like you're actually helping people out. But the APM is super low. You feel like you're just kind of like standing there, crunching and smashing through things, which is really, really nice. I like the lower APM. I think it's interesting. But I find myself wanting more with it a lot of the time. I think the hold down button mechanic is cool. I think that the aesthetic of the class overall is really cool, especially now that you can like set it so you're your visage form and then turn into your dragon form for certain abilities. That feels really immersive and cool. It also just adds to the whole like fanfare of what's on your screen, which is really nice. But with that being said, it's low APM and it's a little too low APM in my opinion. I'd like to see it have like a little bit more in terms of like maybe weaves. I mean, we don't really have weaves in WoW, do we? It's more of a Final Fantasy thing, but you know what I mean. Just like a couple of abilities that you have to like dash to get through to like make sure that you do the most damage possible would be nice. With that being said, it is very novel. It is very fun. I think I'm going to put Devastation in... I'm going to put it in B and a half tier, because it's almost A tier. Because I would make it A tier if I had gone back to it literally at all since playing it, but I have not because I don't want to, so B. Now on the other side of the Drakthir-shaped coin, there's Augmentation Evoker. And Augmentation Evoker is weird. Like, the damage meter in game, when I'm recording this, does not support, like, understanding how Augmentation Evoker does damage. Augmentation Evoker, fundamentally, is an S tier class. You make everyone on the battlefield better. Like, there's no question about it. You're just kind of destroying everything, which is awesome. You have all these abilities and you have all these things, and you have to really read in between the lines to understand how you're doing. And I think that's really cool. You have to like have a fundamental understanding of the game and how the other classes perform to understand how you're doing. And that's very different. I like it. I think it's cool. I did find myself feeling like I was doing nothing a lot of the time. Like when I'm not really thinking and I just want to see Unga Bunga damage number go up, I do not get that. And so a lot of the time it feels like I'm just kind of like throwing my rotation into the void, if that makes sense. Fundamentally, I think it's S tier. I think for the right person it's S tier. And as a novel alt, I think it's S tier. So I think I'm going to give it S tier. Because I think conceptually it's very cool. And I think it's going in the right direction. If it continues down this road, I'll be very happy. If it doesn't, don't at me. Now, with all that being said, I'm just one guy with a day job. I don't have time to go through and gear up all these characters. I don't have time to do meaningful amounts of content with all of them. So I'm sure that there's a lot of different forms of nuance and skill expression within these classes that I missed. So if you have anything you want to say about this list, my evaluation of the different classes, drop it in the comments below. Let me know what you think. Please be nice to me. I'm very sensitive. And I also just want to give a big shout out to all my friends who I annoyed with this project, because I've been yapping about this nonstop. And yeah, thanks for listening to my nonsense. I appreciate all of you. And also, please like, subscribe, do all that noise. It'd be cool. Thanks, and goodbye.